It is the famed waybread of the elves. Capable of staying fresh for months at a time, it would be known for its strengthening properties. And just as notable as its benefits for elven allies, it would be repellent for the creatures of evil. Today on Nerd of the Rings, we cover the history of Lembas. While the most memorable moment involving Lembas would come with Galadriel's gifts of the Third Age, the history of this waybread was much deeper. The bread would originate in Valinor, and it is said that the elves first received it from the Valar as they made the great journey, their first as a people to the Undying Lands. Yavanna, the Queen of the Earth, made Lembas from a kind of corn grown in the fields of the Blessed Realm. She in turn gave some to Orome, who would lead the elves on their long march. Lembas is remarkable in its nature, for the corn had within it the strong life of Valinor, and it could impart it to those who had both the need and the right to use the bread. Understandably, Lembas was a sacred and closely guarded secret of the elves, and since it was Yavanna who made it, tradition held that only the queen, or highest among the elven women of any realm of the elves, would be in charge of the keeping and gifting of Lembas. One of the earliest examples we see is Queen Melian of Doriath, who would give Lembas to the elven hero Beleg Strongbow as he ventured from their realm to seek out Turin Turambar. But Melian said, "A gift you shall now have of me, Cuthalion, for your help and your honor, for I have none worthier to give." And she gave to him a store of Lembas, the waybread of the elves, wrapped in leaves of silver, and the threads that bound it were sealed at the knots with the seal of the queen, a wafer of white wax shaped as a single flower of Telperion. For according to the customs of the Eldalie, the keeping and the giving of this food belonged to the queen alone. "This waybread, Beleg," she said, "shall be your help in the wild and the winter, and the help also of those whom you choose. For I commit this now to you, to apportion as you will in my stead." In nothing did Melian show greater favor to Turin than this gift, for the Eldar had never before allowed men to use this waybread, and seldom did so again. Thus Melian would be the earliest example we see of the Messanie, an elvish word meaning lady, bread giver. While there would presumably have been others, our only confirmed elves to have this title are Melian and Galadriel. As for how this bread was grown and made, we actually learn quite a lot in the Peoples of Middle-earth, in a section titled On Lembas. This section is written by in-world elven loremaster Pengaloth of Gondolin. Here the elf says the corn which made Lembas needed only a little sunlight to ripen, and that it took swiftly, and multiplied all the vigor of any light that fell upon it. It would grow in any season, except during frost. And while it seems to have been a very swift-growing plant, it would notably not grow in the shadow of other plants. Or, notably for First Age elves, it would not endure winds out of the north while Morgoth dwelt there. Thus the elves would grow the corn in guarded, sunlit glades. They would gather its golden ears by hand, and would set no blade of metal to the plant. Now, a quick note on the use of the term corn here. Traditionally, the British use of the word corn is to describe a grain. So it's most likely that Lembas was derived from wheat, whose grain-bearing upper portion is also known as an ear. And a special shout out to a couple friends who pointed out this easily missed detail. Tolkien further writes, "It is written, the white halm was drawn from the earth in like manner, and woven into corn leap for the storing of grain. No worm or gnawing beast would touch that gleaming straw, and rot and mold and other evils of Middle-earth did not assail it. From the ear to the wafer, none were permitted to handle this grain, save those elven women who were called Yavanildi, or by the Sindar, the Ivonwin, the maidens of Yavanna, and the art of the making of Lembas, which they learned of the Valar, was a secret among them, and so ever has remained. This sacred bread of the elves would, on exceedingly rare occasions, be given to mortal men. Elves were hesitant to do so, for some believed that mortals who ate it would become weary of their mortality, and in them would awaken a desire to live among elves instead. The first such honor was given to Turin by Beleg, who had been granted by Melian not only the bread, but the ability to share it with those he chose. And Turin fell silent, looking far away with the eyes of his thought, until suddenly he caught the gleam of another thing that Beleg held in his hand. It was the gift of Melian, but the silver leaves were red in the firelight, and when Turin saw the seal, his eyes darkened. "What have you there?" he said. "The greatest gift that one who loves you still has to give," answered Beleg. "Here is Lembas in Elith, the waybread of the Eldar that no man has yet tasted." "The helm of my fathers I take, with good will for your keeping," said Turin. "But I will not receive gifts out of Doriath." "Then send back your sword and your arms," said Beleg. "Send back also the teaching and fostering of your youth, and let your men, who you say have been faithful, die in the desert to please your mood. Nonetheless, this waybread was a gift not to you but to me, and I may do with it as I will. Eat it not if it sticks in your throat, but others may be more hungry and less proud." Turin's eyes glinted, but as he looked in Beleg's face, the fire in them died, and he went gray, and he said in a voice hardly to be heard, "I wonder, friend, that you deign to come back to such a churl. From you I will take whatever you give, even rebuke. Henceforward you shall counsel me in all ways, save the road to Doriath only." Lembas would again prove useful to Beleg when he meets the elf Gwyndor, who had escaped from captivity in Morgoth's fortress. Later, after Beleg's tragic death, Gwyndor and Turin would take the remaining Lembas to strengthen them on their journey in the wild. Another mortal man who would taste Lembas in the First Age is Tuor, cousin of Turin. When Turgon, the king of Gondolin, had sent sailors toward the west, the mariners had taken with them some of the waybread for their journey. After the elf Voronwe is the sole survivor of their shipwreck, he would meet Tuor and share the bread with the mortal man on their journey back to Gondolin. Finally, we would see the Masanie that Melian herself would train, Galadriel. In the Third Age, the Lady of Lorien would keep a large store of Lembas in her realm, and as we read in The Lord of the Rings, we find the lady and her Yavanilindi would give Lembas to the Fellowship. Elves that could speak their tongue came to them and brought them many gifts of food and clothing for the journey. The food was mostly in the form of very thin cakes, made of a meal that was baked a light brown on the outside, and inside was the color of cream. Gimli took up one of the cakes and looked at it with a doubtful eye. "Cram," he said under his breath as he broke off a crisp corner and nibbled at it. His expression quickly changed, and he ate all the rest of the cake with relish. "No more, no more," cried the elves, laughing. "You have eaten enough already for a long day's march." "I thought it was only a kind of cram, such as the Dale men make for journeys in the wild," said the dwarf. "So it is," they answered, "but we call it Lembas, or waybread, and it is more strengthening than any food made by men, and it is more pleasant than Cram by all accounts."
"Indeed it is," said Gimli. "Why, it is better than the honey cakes of the Beornings, and that is great praise. For the Beornings are the best bakers that I know of, but they are none too willing to deal out their cakes to travelers in these days. You are kindly hosts."
"All the same, we bid you spare the food," they said. "Eat little at a time, and only at need. For these things are given to serve you when all else fails. The cakes will keep sweet for many, many days, if they are unbroken and left in their leaf wrappings, as we have brought them. One will keep a traveler on his feet for a day of long labor, even if he be one of the tall men of Minas Tirith. As tasty and nourishing as lembas would be to friends of the elves like Gimli and the hobbits, we find that it would be downright horrid to creatures of evil. Gollum refused to eat it, and the orcs of Mordor found it even more offensive. Lembas, which translates to journey bread in Sindarin, would sustain Frodo and Sam throughout the vast majority of their journey to Mount Doom, even after it was trampled and broken by the orcs of Cirith Ungol. And seeing the remarkable journey they did solely with lembas to sustain them, it's easy to see why in Quenya it is called koimas, or life bread. Likewise, the other members of the Fellowship would enjoy the benefits of lembas during the days after the breaking of the Fellowship, yet none would have so hard a time finding other sustenance as Frodo and Sam. It's worth noting that lembas was far from the only waybread in Middle-earth. In addition to the honey cakes of the Beornings and the bread of Dale mentioned by Gimli, there was also a bread described in Unfinished Tales that belonged to the Dunedain. And while it was not lembas, its description is quite similar. Though it was a long journey, each of the Dunedain carried in a sealed wallet on his belt a small phial of cordial and wafers of a waybread that would sustain life in him for many days. Not indeed the Mirovor or the lembas of the Eldar, but like them. For the medicine and other arts of Numenor were potent and not yet forgotten. While the medicine and arts of Numenor were not yet forgotten, the ways of lembas would be lost to Middle-earth. For two notable departures would come in the waning days of the Third Age and the dawn of the Fourth. First is the sailing of Galadriel into the west. Second is the death of her granddaughter, Arwen. With Arwen's passing, the western corn and waybread were lost forever in Middle-earth. It's certainly sad to think of this tasty and supernaturally enriching bread disappearing from our world forever. Thankfully, some of my content creator friends have made their own recipes. So if you're interested in trying your hand at making lembas, check out Happy Hobbit, Tea with Tolkien, and Jess of the Shire. I'll put links to all three of their recipes in the description. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to all my Patreon and YouTube supporters who make this channel possible. CCDC Red Team, Evil Chameleon, Tom DeBombadil 19, Lissamy the Cinda, Rabbi Rob Thomas, Charles Leisure, Joe Tepper, The Mighty Mim, Andrew Carlisle, Swirled Traveler, Matthew Jeffrey, Viking Lord, Alvin Einbert, Jeremy Daniel Derby, Madame Director, Freya Firestar, Chris and Meg Q, Leo Vittori, Sky Carcass, Slide Belts, Dane Ragnarsson, Berto Berg, Graham Derricott, The Dark-Haired One, Wyland, Kiara Berlin, Z and N, Evely, Kia, Landry Quinn Walker, Ice Glazer, Micah Wu, and Debbie. If you enjoyed the artwork in this video, check out the artists in the description to purchase prints of their great work for yourself. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time on Nerd of the Rings.